Hey everyone, welcome back. Before we jump into the code, here's a quick look at the app we're building, treatment code using Electron.js and React.js, a desktop app for creating professional treatment codes. Here's the new code screen. You start by entering patient details, name, phone, date of birth, and any notes, then add treatments from a categorized list. Each treatment lets you set the number of visits, frequency, and cost per visit, with the totals updating automatically as you go. On the right, the cost summary breaks down every charge, and you can apply discounts or add extra fees. Right below that, payment options let you choose pay in full, a deposit plus balance, monthly installments, or a fully custom schedule. Now open settings from the sidebar. Under treatments, you can review or add services, fill in the name, category, frequency, cost per visit, default visits, and a short description, then hit save. In payment templates, create reusable plans with a label, a type, and defaults for deposit, installments, or a custom schedule. And on clinic settings, upload your logo, enter your clinic name, phone, email, and address, set the code validity in days, and add your default terms and conditions, then click Save Settings. And finally, clicking Preview and Generate PDF turns everything into a polished, fully branded code ready to download or print. That's the app in a nutshell. Now let's get into the code and start building it from scratch. Install Node.js 18 or later and pnpm globally, then you are ready to set up the app. Create a treatment code app folder. Run pnpm create vite with the React.js template, then run pnpm install to pull in dependencies. Install Tailwind CSS, PostCSS, and Autofraxer. Run pnpm exec Tailwind CSS init, then set tailwind.config.js to scan index.html and src files, and add the Tailwind directives to src index.html. Install Electron and the app libraries like Zustand and React.js, then add Electron Builder concurrently and wait on as dev dependencies. The dev script uses concurrently to run 3 jobs at once. Vite serves the React UI TypeScript watches and rebuilds the Electron main process, and wait on holds Electron until the dev server is ready on port 5173. This is how we get hot reload in the browser layer while still running inside a real Electron window. We have a dedicated build renderer script that runs byte build. That step takes our React source and outputs optimized static assets for the desktop app to load. The build Electron script runs TypeScript against the Electron TS config in watch off production mode. It turns our main process TypeScript into JavaScript under dist. Our main build script runs build renderer first, then build Electron. The dist script runs the full build and then Electron builder. We explicitly allow Electron in the build dependence list. Electron pulls down platform-specific binaries when it installs, and that step has to run or the desktop app will not launch. This line prevents pnpm from silently blocking that download. We also whitelist EastBuild, which Vite uses under the hood for extremely fast transforms. Like Electron, EastBuild installs a native binary match to our operating system, allowing its install script avoids mysterious dev server failures after a clean install. We pull in the DM sans font from font source. That gives us a polished, consistent typeface bundled locally instead of relying on a network font CDN. The hook form resolvers package connects our form library to schema validators like Zod. We will use this to show field-level errors when code inputs are invalid. It keeps validation rules declarative instead of scattered through components. We include React PDF renderer because this app calculates fitment plans and likely exports them as printable quotes. This library lets us describe PDF layouts with React components rather than handwriting PDF commands. That fits naturally with the rest of our UI stack. Datefans gives us modern, tree-shakeable date formatting and arithmetic. Treatment codes often need appointment dates, validity windows, or timeline labels, and this library handles that without heavyweight moment-style bundles. Electron is listed as a runtime dependency because it is the desktop platform for this app. It embeds Chromium for the React UI and Node for main process APIs like follow-step and access. Lucid React supplies crisp, consistent icons for buttons, navigation, and status indicators. We depend on React 18 for building the interactive treatment code interface. Components, hooks, and state all flow through this library in the renderer process. React DOM is the bridge that actually paints our React tree into the browser surface inside Electron. Without it, React components would never reach the screen, so it lets us describe, quote, data shapes and validate user input at runtime with TypeScript-friendly inference. We can guard numeric fields, require treatment lines, and enum selections before generating a PDF or saving a plan. Zustand gives us simple global state for things like the active code, catalog data, or UI preferences. Do you know the types package gives TypeScript knowledge of file system, path, and process APIs in the Electron main process? Without it, main process code would lose autocomplete and type checking. This is foundational for a typed desktop app. React types follow for the renderer. React type definitions teach TypeScript about components, props, and hooks. Our TSX files depend on this package for compile time safety in the code builder UI. It pairs naturally with the React version we declared under dependencies. DOM-specific React types are on the next line. React DOM types extend our typing to render specific APIs like mounting routes and DOM events. Even inside Electron, the UI layer behaves like a browser environment, so these types still apply. Together with React types, they complete the TSX story. Viti's React plugin is next. The Vit React plugin wires JSX transformation and faster refresh into our dev server. That is why UI edits appear quickly while we run the dev script. It is a dev-only piece of plumbing behind the renderer experience. Post-CSS tooling continues with autoprofilers. Post-CSS is the core CSS processing pipeline that runs Tailwind and autoprocess. Vite invokes it whenever styles are compiled for development or production. Think of it as the assembly line for all our utility for styling. Before we move on, notice concurrently sits just above in the dev tooling list. Electron Builder turns our compiled app into distributable installers for Windows, macOS, or Linux depending on configuration. Tailwind CSS is our styling system for layout, spacing, color, and responsive behavior in the renderer. Utility classes speed up building dense business UIs like cost breakdown tables. It works hand in hand with ColosX and Tailwind merge in the runtime dependencies. TypeScript itself comes next. TypeScript 5.4 powers type checking and emaps JavaScript for both Electron and tooling configs. Our build Electron script depends on this compiler via the TSC command. Strong typing is especially valuable when pricing logic and PDF output must stay consistent. One more dev utility waits on the next line. Vite is the build tool and dev server for the React renderer. From the treatment code app folder, run pn as installed to fetch all dependencies. Run npm dev to launch the desktop app in development mode. We add Tailwind CSS as our first plugin with an empty options object. That means we are happy with the defaults from the separate Tailwind config file. This step is what turns utility class names in your components into real CSS rules. We register Autopraxer as the second plugin, again with default settings. It runs after Tailwind and adds things like flexbox and grid prefixes where older browsers need them. We do not have to write those prefixes by hand in our source files. We open our Tailwind config with the js.type comment at the very top. This tells our editor that everything below should match Tailwind's official config shape. Notice that we get autocomplete and type checking without switching this file to TypeScript. That small hint saves us from typos in property names later on, so let's move down to where we actually export the config. On this line, we export our configuration using module exports, which is the standard pattern for a Tailwind config file. We are not exporting a function here, just a plain object that Tailwind reads at real time. What's key here is that every setting we customize will live inside this one exported object. Here we set the content property to an array of file globs. We include the root index HTML file, everything under srac with TypeScript and TSX extensions, and the same for our Electron folder. Tailwind only keeps CSS for classes it finds in those paths, which keeps our production bundle lean. With scanning configured, let's open up the theme section where we customize the design tokens. Extends Tailwind's default theme rather than replacing it, so we keep built-in utilities and add our own on top. Declares a font bottle extension so we can override Tailwind's default sans serif stack. Setting sans to DM sans makes font sans and default text utilities use our brand typeface across the app. Extends full source so we can introduce a smaller than XS text scale for fine print and compact labels. The 2x token at 0.65 rem gives us a reusable text 2x utility for very small UI copy. Pull in Vibes config helper. Add the official React plugin. The plugins array is where we activate Vite extensions. React is the essential one for this app. Customizing outdoor sans compiled front-end assets to a folder that fits the project's overall architecture. Electron core imports. Path module import. Premises-based FS import. Exists sync import. Keeps a module-level reference to the primary browser window so other handlers can use it. Packaged apps load build files. Dev builds load the Vite dev server instead. User data lives in Electron's per app folder, not inside the project directory. Path then Goin keeps field names portable across operating systems. A generic read helper safely loads JSON and falls back when files are missing or corrupt. Missing files on first run should return defaults, not errors. UTF-8 text is read from disk and parsed into a typed JavaScript object. Corrupt or unreadable files should not take down the app. Pretty printed JSON with 2-space indentation makes user data files human readable. Browser windows where React UI will render inside a native desktop shell. A desktop code tool needs a comfortable default size with sensible minimum bounds. Branding and background color show before the web content fully paints. Context isolation and a preload script are Electron security best practices. The preload script exposes a safe, whitelisted API to the renderer via context bridge. Development loads Vice hardware load server. Production loads the packaged HTML bundle. Nulling the reference prevents use after close bugs in IPC handlers. Window creation must wait until Electron has finished initializing. macOS keeps apps running in the dock even after all windows are closed. Windows and Linux apps typically exit when the last window is closed. The renderer asks the main process to read treatments from persistent storage. Treatment edits in the UI are persisted by writing JSON back to disk. Clinic settings load with rich defaults, so the app works out of the box. Sensible starter values let users generate quotes before configuring everything. Quote validity and payment templates have safe starter values too. Settings changes from the UI are written to settings.json on disk. Printing delegates to the native OS print dialog via the main Windows web contents. Failed print jobs are reported to the console without crashing the app. The renderer can update the native window title to reflect the current quote. PDF export combines a native save dialog with writing binary data to disk. Users pick where to save the file through the operating system's standard dialog. The chosen path receives decoded base64 PDF content written as a binary file. Core React library import. Browser mounting API import. Root application component import. Create root finds the HTML mount point and starts the React render pipeline. Strict mode enables extra development checks to catch unsafe patterns early. App is the single child rendered into the root, representing the full application UI. Declares the patient interface. Defines the patient ID. Defines the patient name. Optional date of birth. Defines the patient phone. Optional email field. Defines the patient address. Optional patient notes. Declares the treatment interface. Defines the treatment ID. Defines the treatment name. Defines the treatment category. Optional treatment description. Sets the default cost per visit. Sets the default visit count. Close the interface definition. Selected treatment extends treatment. Defines the visits override. Defines the frequency override. Cost per visit override. Close the interface definition. Declares the payment option interface. Defines the payment option ID. Defines the payment option label. Restricts payment type to full deposit, installment, or custom. Optional deposit amount. Optional installment count. Declares the quote interface. Defines the quote ID. Embedded patient on quote. Selected treatments array. Defines the quote subtotal. Defines the discount. Defines the discount mode. Computed discount amount. Defines the additional charges. Defines the quote total. Selected payment option. Defines the quote validity date. Stores terms and conditions text on the quote. Close the interface definition. Declares the clinic settings interface. Clinic name setting. Clinic address setting. Clinic phone setting. Clinic email setting. Optional logo as base64. Optional accent color. Sets the default terms and conditions. Sets the default quote validity days. Discount mode is a small union type that controls how discount values are interpreted on quotes. Imports React hooks. Imports React router pieces. Imports sidebar. Imports top bar. Imports loading screen. Imports X.hook. hook. Imports clinic settings type. Imports new quote page. Imports the quote preview page. Imports admin page. Layout is a nested road wrapper that renders persistent Chrome and passes context to child pages. Read current location. Create PDF handler ref. Comment explaining registration. Register PDF handler signature.
Start handler in ref.
Outer flex wrapper. Render sidebar. Main column container. Top bar with PDF callback. Main area and outlet. App is the default export that orchestrates startup loading before rendering the rotor tree. Select hydrate from store. Boot setting state is ready state flag. Start UFACT. Begin boot and timer. Load settings from Electron. Merge with store defaults. Save settings and hydrate store. Minimum loading delay. Mark app ready. Invoke boot and set dApps. Until boot completes, the app shows loading screen with the best available settings instead of an empty router. Wraps routes into DOR. Defines the parent layout route. Defines the home new quote route. Defines the preview route. Defines the admin route. Every TypeScript project starts with a root config object that tells the compiler how to behave. The compiler options block is where all TypeScript behavior settings live. The target option controls which JavaScript language features TypeScript assumes at runtime. Use define for class fields aligns TypeScript class field output with the ECMAScript standard. The library tells TypeScript which global APIs and language built-ins are available. The module setting defines how import and export syntax is preserved for the bundler. Skip libcheck speeds up builds by skipping deep validation of declaration files in node_modules. Module resolution bundler matches how Vite resolves imports in a modern front-end toolchain. Allow importing TS extensions. Let source files import other files using .s or .sxsuffix when needed. Imports JSON as modules. Isolated modules ensures every file can be transpiled independently, which Vite and sbuild require. No emet means TypeScript, only type checks. Vite handles all JavaScript output. JSX React.js uses the modern automatic JSX runtime introduced in React 17. Strict enables the full set of TypeScript safety checks for safer application code. No unused parameters, false avoids errors for callback signatures where not every parameter is needed yet. No filter cases in switch requires explicit breaks or returns between switch cases. Tables anchors module path mapping to the project root directory. The path object declares shorthand import prefixes that map to folders in the project. The ** alias lets imports use a short prefix that resolves to everything under the *# folder. They include array limits type checking to application source files under *#. Project references connect this app config to ts config.node.json for Vite and build tooling. Imports context bridge and IPC render from Electron. Context bridge that exposes main world publishes a named API object that the React app can call on window. The renderer can persist treatment data by invoking a named IPC channel in the main process. Loading saved treatments is a simple invoke with no arguments. App settings follow the same IPC invoke pattern as treatment data. Settings are loaded through a dedicated IPC channel with no render side path logic. Printing is delegated to the main process through a single invoke call. The renderer can update the native window title through IP. Saving a PDF requires both a default file line and the encoded file contents. The PDF save body forwards both arguments to the save PDF IPC handler. The compiler options section is where TypeScript gets its core instructions for how to compile our Electron code. Target and module determine what JavaScript version we emit and how modules are loaded in Node and Electron. The library controls which global APIs and language features TypeScript knows about during type checking. How dir and root dir control the folder structure of compiled output relative to our Electron source files. Strict mode catches more bugs at compile time by enforcing rigorous type rules across the entire Electron codebase. Skip libcheck speeds up compilation by skipping deep validation of third-party declaration files. S module Europe lets us import common JS packages using standard ES module import syntax. Resolve JSON module lets us import JSON data directly and get proper TypeScript types for the imported object. Module resolution node tells TypeScript to resolve imports the same way Node.js does, which is essential for Electron. The include pattern scoots compilation to every TypeScript file under the Electron directory tree. Excluding node_modules prevents TypeScript from wasting time compiling third-party dependencies files. Load DM sends custom from font source. Load DM sends from font source. Load DM sends 6 cents from font source. The base layer injects tailwinds, reset, and foundational element styles into the build. The components layer is where reusable component classes from plugins or custom CSS can live. Scope global element fixes inside Tailwind's base layer so they participate in the correct cascade order. Border box sizing makes width and height math intuitive when padding and borders are added. Heart, node, body, and the React root must all stretch to 100% height for full page layouts. Zero margin and padding on the document shell removes the browser's default page inset. Tailwind apply lets us reuse design tokens for background, text color, and font smoothing on the body. The font family declaration connects our font source imports to every piece of text in the app. Chrome and Safari expose inner and outer spin buttons on number inputs that we need to hide explicitly. Removing appearance and margin eliminates the stepper UI while keeping the input type as number. Mozilla uses a different property, text field appearance, to suppress number input steppers. The date input class strips native styling so date fields match the rest of the form controls. Appearance none and allied color scheme prevent dark native widgets from breaking the form palette. WebKit's calendar icon pseudo element must be restyled so a custom layout can cover the same hid area. A white transparent indicator keeps the date picker easy to open even when the icon is hidden. The DateTime added pseudo element carries default padding that throws off vertical alignment in custom inputs. The field's wrapper groups date segments, clearing its padding keeps the control compact and aligned. Month, day, year, and separator pseudo elements each need explicit color rules in WebKit date inputs. Slick 900 on values and tight horizontal padding make type dates match standard input text. Lighter separator text de-emphasizes punctuation so the date digits remain the focal point. Firefox scrollbar width and scrollbar color give us a subtle track and thumb without custom WebKit rules. Imports clinic brand mark from the UI components folder. Defines a small contract that says this component needs clinic settings to render correctly. The component receives clinic settings so it can show the correct name and logo while content loads. The outer div centers content vertically and horizontally across the entire available height. Pass the clinic name and logo from settings into the shared brand mark component. The large size variant makes the logo prominent during the initial loading moment. The settings name appears as bold text beneath the logo for clear identification. The first dot pulses immediately with no animation delay. A 150 millisecond delay offsets the second dot for a wave effect. The third dot completes the wave with the longest delay. React, use state, import, React Reader now import. File text and settings icons. Concurrence and merge utility. Use a pap store global state hook. Clinic brand mark UI component. Version text is a single source of truth shown only when the sidebar expands. Navigation is data-driven, routes, icons, and labels live in one array. Sidebar is the named exported function component used by the app layout shell. A Boolean flag toggles width and label visibility when the pointer enters or leaves. Clinic name and logo come from global settings, so branding updates propagate instantly. Hover-driven expansion avoids a permanent wide sidebar eating horizontal space. The top row is a fixed height bar with a bottom border separating branding from navigation. The brand mark always stays visible in the collapsed rail regardless of expansion. Opacity and width transitions hide the name in collapse mode without unmounting it. Each link needs a stable key, destination, exact matching, and an accessible label. Active routes get a filled background. Inactive links stay muted until hover. When a silhouette is true white text and a slate background show the current page. Icons sit in a fixed 14-pixel column so they stay aligned when collapsed. Labels use the same opacity and width trick as the clinic name for a consistent expand feel. The visible words come from the navitems config, not hard-coded strings in JSXs. The version faded when collapsed, so the narrow rail shows only icons and the logo. Epic_version is interpolated into user-facing copy prefix with the letter V. Imports React rotor location and navigation hooks. Imports download icon from Lucid. Imports shared button UI component. Each root gets a human readable title shown in the header. Declare top bar props interface. Optional generate PDF callback prop. Top bar is a reusable header that receives optional PDF behavior from above. The header title follows the current URL with a sensible fallback. The PDF action only shows on rules where exporting makes sense. One button triggers different behavior depending on the current page. On the code page, we navigate to preview. On preview, we invoke the parent callback. A fixed height bar anchors the page with a button border and horizontal layout. The resolve title is the primary label users see in the top bar. Render button when show PDF button is true. Download icon and root specific button label. Imports card header and card title. Imports input from UI library. Imports use App Store or Zustand hook. Imports format currency and parse money import. Import CN for conditional classes. This exported function is the sticky sidebar that summarizes code costs. The full code object holds treatments, totals, and discount settings. Discount input changes flow through a dedicated store setter. Users can switch between flat amount and percentage discount modes. Optional fees beyond treatments are updated through the store. Local aliases make the JASX cleaner for treatments, discounts, and totals. The summary stays visible while scrolling thanks to sticky positioning. A clear title labels this panel as the cost summary section. When no treatments are selected, we show a friendly placeholder instead of a blank list. Selected treatments render as a vertical list of name and cost pairs. Each treatment gets list row keyed by its unique ID. Line items show truncated names on the left and tabular numbers on the right. A top border visually separates line items from subtotal, discount, and total. Subtotal reflects the sum of all selected treatment costs before adjustments. The discount area groups mode, toggle, and input under a small heading. The flat mode button applies a fixed dollar amount of the subtotal. CN implies dark background when flat mode is selected, light when not. The percent mode button applies discount as a percentage of subtotal. Selected percent mode gets the same dark highlight as flat mode. A number input captures the raw discount value with mode-aware validation. Typed discount values are parsed, clamped to 0, and sent to the store. When a discount applies, we display the actual money saved in green text. Extra fees beyond treatments are entered in a labeled number field. Card charge values update the store and roll into the final total. The bold total row shows the final quote amount after all adjustments. React UHACT import. React hook form import. Zod resolver import. Zavi import. Defense format import. Card UI import. Input and text area import. Date input input. Use App Store import. Defines the patient type import. Declares a Zod object schema that will validate every patient field before it is trusted. Full name is mandatory because quotes must identify who they belong to. The date helps identify the patient but is not required to create a quote. A contact phone is required so the clinic can follow up about the quote. Email may be blank, but if provided, it must be a valid address format. Address supports mailing or billing context but does not block form submission. Every quote needs a date stamp for records, pricing context, and PDF output. Free form notes capture context that does not fit structured fields. Syntax type scrub type from the schema, so form values stay type safe. Patient info module is a named export that renders the patient section of the code builder. Pull the current patient from the code and the setter that updates it in Zustand. Register connects inputs, watch streams values, and arrows carries validation messages. The resolver runs our schema on every change because mode is on change. Quote date defaults to today formatted as a string, where no patient record exists yet. Validating on every change gives immediate feedback as the user fills the form. What returns the current form object so we can sync it to the store in an effect. A USPEC writes watched values into set patient whenever any field changes. The return wraps the form in a card with a clear patient information title. A responsive grid lays out pairs of fields side by side on wider screens. Name input props defines the register name. An optional date input captures birth date without blocking the form. Code date input props. Register code date. Phone input props. Defines the register phone. Email input props. Defines the register email. Address text area props. Defines the register address. Notes text area props. Defines the register notes. Imports use date from React. Imports cardia components. Imports import component. Imports use App Store hook. Imports currency formatting helpers. Imports payment calculation helpers. Imports CN class merge utility. Imports payment option type. The full payment option represents paying the entire quote total upfront. The deposit option lets the patient pay part now and the rest as a balance. The installment option splits the total into equal monthly payments. The custom option allows free text payment schedules for flexible arrangements. For full payment, the description is simply the formatted total amount. Deposit descriptions show both the upfront deposit and the remaining balance. Installment descriptions show month count times monthly payment amount. Custom schedules use the stored text or placeholder when empty. Build manual option assembles the typed payment option from current form values. The full type returns the minimal option with only ID, label, and type. Deposit options include the deposit amount field from current form state. Installment options carry the installments count from form state. Custom options store the free text schedule string. Reads total setter and selected option from the global app store. Saved payment templates from settings appear as quick select cards above manual options. Deposit amount holds the upfront payment the user enters for deposit plans. Installment stores how many months the total is split across. Custom schedule holds the free text payment plan description. Apply option synchronizes local UI state and the global store when any option is chosen. First, we set the local selected ID so the correct radio appears checked. Deposit installments and custom schedule local state update only when present on the option. Set payment option writes the chosen plan into global quote state. Selecting a saved template spreads it into apply option. Manual selection builds an option from current form values, then applies it. Changing deposit amount updates local state in the store only when deposit mode is active. When deposit is selected, we rebuild and save the deposit payment option. When installment is selected, we rebuild the option with the new month count. Typing a custom schedule updates local text and store when custom is selected. When custom is selected, each change rebuilds the custom payment option in the store. Balance and monthly are computed once per render for descriptions and helper text. Open, return, and card. Card title and close header. A flex column with gap stacks all payment option cards vertically. Save templates only render when the settings array has at least one entry. A small uppercase label separates saved templates from manual configuration. Each saved template becomes a payment option card with description from get payment description. Template cards show computed descriptions and call handle select template on click. When templates exist, a second label introduces the default manual options below. Default underscore options drives the manual payment cards every user can configure. Each manual card shows a live description based on type and current form value. Installment shows months times monthly rate, custom shows schedule text or placeholder. Manual cards check against selected ED and call handle select manual on change. The deposit amount field appears only when deposit is the active selection. A number input captures deposit with min 0 and max total quote amount. The input shows deposit amount and parses changes through update deposit. Below the input, we show the remaining balance due after the deposit. The month field appears only when installment is selected. Installment input label and constraints. Installment value binding. Parsing installment input clamps to at least 1 month and calls update installments. Below the month's input, we show the calculated monthly payment amount. The free text schedule field appears only when custom is the active selection. Imports the custom input label and type. Custom value placeholder and unchanged. Payment option card is a presentational radio row used for both templates and defaults. The ID prop identifies each radio value and key selection state. The label prop is the primary visible title on each payment card. The description prop shows the payment summary under the label. The checked prop controls selected styling and radio state. Unselect fires when the user picks this payment option. Optional children render inline inputs below the description when provided. The card renders as a clickable label wrapping a radio and content column. CN toggles border and background classes based on check state. A native radio input enforces single selection within the payment option group. Area label, accent color, and unchanged connect the radio to parent handlers. The right column shows the title, subtitle, and any child inputs. Imports usage and demo from React. Imports X icon from Lucid-React. Imports card header, and card title. Imports select drop-down component. Imports button component. Imports badge component. Imports shifts App Store global state hook. Exports a named function component that renders the full treatment selector UI. Subscribes to the full treatment list and the quotes currently selected treatments. Pull, add, and remove actions from the store to update the quote. Tracks which treatment ID is currently chosen in the select control. Begin a memorized computation that reshapes treatments into select groups. Groups catalog treatments by category key. Transforms the category map into an array of group objects for the select. Builds a set of IDs already on the code for all one membership checks. Declares a local function that runs when the user clicks add. Find the full treatment object by ID and push it into the code. Derive whether the dropdown's current ID is already on the quote. Returns JSX wrapped in a card with the treatment's heading. Opens a horizontal flex row for the dropdown and add button. Renders the group select inside a flex screwing container. Control the dropdown with selected ID and update it on change. Renders a primary button wired to handle add with disable rules. Shows added versus add based on whether the pick is already quoted. Branch between an empty state and a list of chosen treatments. Shows a dashed placeholder when no treatments are on the quote. Opens a vertical list and begin mapping each selected treatment. Give each treatment a bordered row with flex layout. Shows the treatment name in a truncating label. Renders a badge with the treatments category for quick scanning. Adds a clickable remove control that calls remove treatment. Displays the X icon inside the remove button. Card header and card title imports. Import component import. Use App Store import. Format currency and parse money input imports. The component subscribes to the list of treatments the user has chosen. Each input change will patch a single treatment by ID through this action. If nothing is selected, the module renders nothing instead of an empty card. This section label tells users they are configuring visit schedules and costs. Each selected treatment gets its own stacked row inside a flex column. Every row opens with the treatment name so users know which line they are editing. Visit count is parsed, clamped to at least 1, and saved back to the store. Money input is parsed safely and never allowed to go negative. Leaving the cost field blank resets it to 0 instead of an invalid state. Total cost is displayed from store state, not edited directly by the user. Import HTML attributes from React for span props. Import CN from the utils folder. Lock badge styling to a small predictable set of named variants. Extend standard span props so the badge behaves like a span while adding one custom option. Expose a single optional variant prop that selects which color scheme the badge uses. Centralize all look and feel rules in one lookup object keyed by variant name. Destructure props with defaults and collect everything else to forward to the underlying span. Renders a span because badges are inline labels, not block level containers. Merges base layout classes, variant colors, and any color overrides into one clan span value. Spread leftover props so the badge stays accessible and interactive like a normal span. Displays whatever label or icon the parent passes as children inside the style pill. Imports for ref and pattern attribute types from React. Imports the CN class name merge helper. Lock button appearance into full named variants so usage stays consistent across the app. Constrain button sizing to 3 predictable presets instead of arbitrary padding values. Extends native button attributes so our component feels like a normal button with a few extra knobs. Callers can choose which visual style the button renders without touching class strings. The size prop selects padding and text scale from a fixed set of presets. A loading flag lets the button show progress and block double submissions. Centralized variant styling in a lookup object so JSX stays readable. Ghost and danger variants cover low emphasis and destructive actions. Exports a ref forwarding button so parents can focus on measure the DOM node. How variant size, loading, and pass to props, art, and SAP friendly defaults. The component renders a native button element as its root. The ref attaches to the DOM button so parents can interact with it directly. Share the layout and motion classes apply to every variant and size. Keyboard focus and disabled states get consistent accessible styling. Selected variant and size pull their tailwind strings from the maps we defined earlier. An optional class and prop lets consumers tweak spacing or layout without forgetting the component. The button disables itself during loading or when explicitly disabled by the parent. Standard button attributes like onclick and type flow through without redeclaration. A lightweight CSS spinner appears beside the label while loading is true. The visible label comes from child content passed by the parent component. Setting these makes the component easy to spot in React DevTools stacks. Imports HTML attributes type from React. Declares the core props interface. Optional padding prop with size variants. A lookup object translates the padding prop into consistent tailwind spacing utilities, card function signature, and the structured props. Return statement opening. Outer dev wrapper element. Base card surface and border styles. Dynamic padding and color cleanse and merge. Spread remaining HTML props. Render children inside the card. Card header function signature. Flex header row with bottom margin. Card header children and closing tags. Card title function signature. Style tube tree title element. Card title children close tags and file end. React forward ref and input attribute types. We'll see the calendar icon. CM utility for conditional classes. Extends native input props while fixing the input type to date. An optional label lets forms show a caption above the date field. The error prop drives red borders and an error message below the field. Hints give guidance when there is no validation error to show pull out label, arrow, hint, and styling props and forward the rest. Use a provided ID or generate one from the label text. When label is provided, we render an accessible label tied to the input ID. A relative wrapper positions the calendar icon over the input. The input uses type date and receives the forwarded ref and computed ID. Default classes set size, borders, focus ring, disabled state, and transitions. Error state and color cleanse and merge on top of the base styles. Rest props pass through standard input attributes like value, on change, and disabled. The icon is purely visual and does not intercept pointer events. Validation errors take priority. Hints only show when there is no error. This only makes a component easy to identify in React DevTools. In input.ess imports forward ref and input HTML attributes from React. Imports the CN class merge helper. Declare input props extending native input attributes. Optional label prop for accessible field text. Optional error prop for validation feedback. Export input rec in forward ref. The structure label, error, hint, cleanse noun ID, and spread the rest. Input ID comes from an explicit ID prop or is auto-generated from the label text. The return wraps everything in a vertical flex column with consistent spacing. When label is provided, a styled label element links to the input via how to read. The native input receives the forwarded ref, computed ID, and opening class and merge. Pulse editor, focus ring, and disabled states are applied through additional utility classes. Custom class and merges last, and all remaining native props pass through to the input. Error text takes priority. In text only appears when there is no error. Setting this main helps React DevTools show input instead of forward ref. A comment marks the start of the parallel text editor implementation. Declare texter. Groups extending texter HTML attributes. Optional label prop on text area props. Optional arrow prop on text arrow props. Export text area wrap and forward ref. Destructure text area props and spread the remainder. Teresa reuses the same ID fallback logic derived from the label. Teresa returns the same vertical flex layout shell as input. The label markup and styling are identical to input for consistency. The text brackets ref, ID, and base sizing classes suited for monoline content. Teresa adds resign none while sharing focus, disabled, and arrow styling with input. Color class and merges last and remaining props spread onto the text sphere. Teresa uses the same arrow over hint priority as input. Teresa design main ensures DevTools shows a clear component name. In admin.tss file input area level wire on change to handle logo change. Tailwind file input styling. Conditional remove logo block. Remove logo button opening. Button type prevents submit. Clear logo preview on click. Remove link styling. Remove button opening tag close. Remove logo label text. To color field grid. Renders the clinic name input field. Renders the phone input field. Renders the email input field. Renders the quote validity days input field. Address field wrapper. Address text tria. Set the default terms wrapper. Set the default terms text tria. Save button row wrapper. Save setting submit button. Save icon and button label. In MuiQuote.tsx, React will say import. React router navigation import. Defines the patient info module card. Defines the treatment selector module import. Visit planning module import. Cost summary module import, payment options module import, shared button UI import, global app store import. The navigate function is how we move to the preview route on button click. Reset code clears the entire code so the user can start fresh. Reselect the treatments to decide whether preview should be enabled. Patient name is the other gate for enabling the preview button. A numeric key lets us force patient info module to remount after a reset. Preview is only allowed when there is at least one treatment and a patient name. This handler resets global code state and remounts the patient form. Calling reset code clears treatments, patient, and related code fields globally. Changing the key forces patient info module to unmount and mount again with clean state. Patient info, treatments, and visit planning stack vertically in the two-column wide left area. Cost and payment modules sit in the third column for a live financial sidebar. The footer holds primary actions aligned to the right with a top body separator. The secondary button resets the form via handle new code with an accessible label. The primary button navigates to preview only when can preview is true. Import preview.ss imports UseGo, useHack, useState from React, imports useNavigate, and use outlet context. Imports arrow left, download printer icons. Imports button from UI components. Imports badge from UI components. Imports use App Store. Imports format currency utility. Imports calculate balance and calculate monthly installment. Imports download PDF utility. Imports format from date.fns. Use navigate powers the back to edit button. The parent layout exposes a callback registrar through outlet context. The layout accepts a no argument callback to trigger PDF download. Build code assembles the full code object from store slices. Clinic branding and contact details come from store settings. Calling build code produces the snapshot this page renders. A Boolean flag drives the download PDF button loading spinner. Use callback wraps an async function that exports the code as PDF. Sets loading true before kicking off PDF generation. Download PDF receives a fresh quote and current clinic settings. Failures are logged without crashing the page. Finally ensures the button leaves loading state whether or not export succeeded. Build code and settings are the only values the callback loses over. UseEffect tells the layout shell which function to call for PDF download. Print delegates to the Electron main process print dialog. Electron exposes a native print dialog through the preload API. The root container centers a preview with padding and a max width. The toolbar sits above the document and hides when printing. Ghost button navigates home with an accessible label. Secondary actions sit in a horizontal flex group. Printer icon and label complete the print action. Primary button triggers async PDF export with loading state. Download icon and label finish the export button. The document card mimics paper and strips Chrome when printing. Header row splits clinic logo and contact info. Logo image or fallback initial represents the clinic brand. When no logo is uploaded, the clinic name initial fills the square. Name, address, phone, and email align right in the letterhead. Title and patient line introduce the document purpose. Patient name is highlighted in the subtitle. A two-column grid lists patient metadata and code dates. Phone valid until email and address fill the grid when present. Section heading and table introduce the treatment plan lines. 6 columns cover treatment details and pricing. Frequency and cost columns complete the table header. Each selected treatment becomes one table row keyed by ID. Patch shows category, visits, and frequency describe the schedule. Per visit and total costs use tabular numbers for alignment. Summary block right aligns a narrow column of totals. Discount draw appears only when discount is greater than 0. Extra fees render only when additional charges is positive. Bold total with top border emphasizes the final amount due. Section shows the selected payment option label and details. Full payment explains the entire total is due at service time. Deposit plan shows upfront deposit and remaining balance. Installment plan shows count and monthly payment amount. Custom plans display a pre-written schedule string. Footer shows generation date and code validity end date. Detail row accepts a label and optional value for grid rows. Rows with no value render nothing. Label and value sit side by side with fixed label width. Section heading wraps arbitrary children as an uppercase section title. Small uppercase tracked heading separates document sections. Table header cell helper accepts children and alignment. Alignment maps to Tailwind text alignment utilities. Header text renders inside the styled element. Summary: row pairs a label with a formatted value string. Label and value spread across the row with tabular numbers on the value. In use at store.ts, imports create from Zustand. Defines the treatment type. Imports the selected treatment type. Imports the clinic settings type. Imports the payment option type. Defines the patient type. Defines the code type. Imports the discount mode type. Calculate treatment total import. Calculate subtotal import. Apply discount import. Calculate total import. Default underscore settings gives the app sensible clinic info before anything is saved. Default terms and quote validity define legal and expiration behavior. Seed underscore treatments populates the catalog on first launch. Each seed item includes description and default visit pricing. Rehabilitation treatments typically involve many recurring visits. Default visits and frequency pre-fill the quote line item. Wellness category treatments round out the demo catalog. 8 visits at $90 models a multi-session package. Alternative medicine entries show category diversity. 10 visits at $110 per session is the default acupuncture plan. The final seat item covers chiropractic care. 15 visits completes the demo catalog constant. Quote state models everything mutable while building a quote. Patient on the quote is optional and may be partially filled. This array holds customized treatment line items on the active quote. The raw discount value is either dollars or percent depending on mode. Discount mode switches between flat and percentage discounts. Extra fees sit outside treatment line items but affect the total. The chosen payment plan is stored but does not change math totals. Subtotal is derived from selected treatments, not edited directly. This is the dollar value removed from the subtotal. Total is the bottom line shown to the patient. A SPAT is the complete Zustand store shape including actions. The treatments array is the master catalog, not the quote selection. Clinic-wide configuration drives titles, terms, and validity. All in-progress code data lives in this nested code state object. Components wait for hydration before reading catalog or settings. Hydrate loads treatments and settings from the Electron main process. Merges partial patient fields into the draft code. Copies a catalog treatment into selected treatments with defaults. Drops a line item by ID and recalculates totals. Patches visits, frequency, or cost on one selected line. Updates the raw discount input value. Toggles between flat and percentage discount behavior. Sets extra fees applied after the discount. Assigns a payment template without touching totals. Returns quote state to a fresh empty draft. Persists the catalog array through Electron and update state. Persists clinic settings and updates the window title. Build code snapshots draft state into a finalized code with metadata. Recalculate centralizes subtotal, discount, and total math for code edits. Subtotal sums selected treatment line totals. Discount amount depends on mode being percent or flat. Total folds in additional charges after discount. Returns a pick of only the computer total fields. Empty code produces a zero draft code with safe defaults. All totals start at 0 until treatments are added. Use store starts empty until hydrate loads persisted data. Treatments and settings load concurrently from Electron APIs. Save treatments win, otherwise we fall back to seed data. Loaded settings shallow merge over defaults for missing keys. Empty storage triggers writing seed underscore treatments to disk. Loaded data flips is hydrated so the UI can render. The Electron shell title reflects the loaded clinic name. Shallow merge preserves existing patient fields while updating new ones. The same catalog ID cannot appear twice on one quote. Defaults from the catalog, seed visits, frequency, cost, and line total. Appending a row updates subtotal, discount amount, and total in one set. Filtering by ID drops one line and recomputes all totals. Only the matching AD gets merged changes, others pass through. Updated line totals flow into subtotal and final total. Changing the discount value immediately refreshes computer totals. Switching mode reinterprets the same discount number. Extra fees bump the total without touching treatment rows. Payment choice is stored for export but skips recalculate. Replaces the entire quote slice with a fresh empty quote. Writes catalog to disk, then mirrors it in Sustat. There's the settings and updates, both store and window title. Build quote snapshots live store data at call time. Quote expiration adds validity days to the patient quote date. The exported quote copies ID as patient treatments and pricing fields. Defaults fill missing payment terms and creation metadata. The save action finishes by building and returning a complete quote record from the draft values. Pricing adjustments from the draft quote are carried over unchanged into the persisted record. If the user never picked a payment plan, the quote defaults to pay in full. Metadata like validity, default terms, and creation time turns a draft into a formal saved quote. In Electron.js, an MD export makes this declaration file a proper TypeScript module instead of a global script. Augment window so TypeScript knows about a custom Electron API bridge on window. Electron API is the typed object that mirrors methods exposed from the Electron preload script. Save treatments persists treatment data and returns a success flag. Move treatments reads save treatment data from the main process. Save settings writes app configuration through the Electron bridge. Load settings retrieve stored configuration from disk. Open print dialog triggers the native print flow from the renderer. Suppress the renderer update the application window title. Save PDF writes a base 64 encoded PDF and reports success, cancellation, and file path. In calculation superrods the selected treatment type. A single treatment line item is priced by multiplying how many visits the patient needs by the cost per visit. Negative visit counts or negative prices are clamped to 0 before multiplication, so line totals never go below 0. The subtotal is the sum of every selected treatment's pre-computed total cost. Array reduce walks every treatment and accumulates total cost into a running subtotal. Discounts can be expressed as a percentage of the subtotal or as a fixed amount capped by the subtotal. Percent discounts are clamped between 0 and 100, then applied as a fraction of the subtotal. Fixed discounts cannot exceed the subtotal and cannot be negative. The final total starts from the subtotal, subtracts the discount, and adds any extra charges. The total is subtotal minus discount plus additional charges floored at 0. Payment plans divide the total evenly across a chosen number of months. If month is 0 or negative, the full total is returned instead of dividing by an invalid divisor. A valid month count divides the total into equal monthly payments. The remaining balance is whatever is left of the total after the patient pays a deposit. Deposits are clamped to 0 or higher, and the balance is the total minus deposit floored at 0. In clinicbrand.js introduced a small utility whose job is to turn a clinic name into short initials for branding. Take the first two letters when the clinic name is only one word. Combine the first letter of the first two words into standard two-letter initials. In cn.ts imports ELSX and the class value type. Imports store match from tailwind merge, exports a React cn function that accepts class values and returns a string. In format.ts, currency formatter signature with locale and currency defaults. Configure Intel number format for currency style. Format the value and return the currency string. Parser function accepts a raw string value. Convert clean string to floating point number. Reject invalid or negative numbers and return safe value. Blur handler takes the current input string. Parse input and return empty string for 0. Clean up user-provided names so they are safe to use as file names on any operating system. In pdfgenerator.ts, imports the React PDF primitives used to compose the treatment code document. Imports PLPemp to assemble the PDF document imperatively. Imports code types, currency formatting, payment calculations, dates, and fill-line sanitization. Sets the base page font size, color padding, and background for every PDF. Styles the header row, logo slot, and right-aligned clinic contact block. Styles section headings and the two-column patient detail rows. Styles the treatment table header rows and per column alignment. The styles cost summary rows, the grand total, terms text, and footer metadata. Defines the document component that receives a quote snapshot and clinic settings. Destructures patient info, treatments, pricing, payment option, and terms from the quote. Creates the document wrapper and the single A4 page with base styles applied. Renders the clinic logo when available and right-aligned contact details. Renders patient and quote metadata in labeled rows, including optional email and address. Builds the treatment table header with all 6 column labels. Maps every selected treatment into a row with formatted per visit and total costs. Renders subtotal, optional discount and additional charges, and the final total. Shows the selected payment option with deposit balance, installments, or custom schedule. Renders optional terms and conditions plus a footer with generation and validity dates. Defines the async download PDF function that accepts all code and clinic settings. Builds the document element and converts it to a PDF blob. Constructs a safe fill-in from the patient name and quote date. When running in Electron, converts the blob to base64 and calls a native save dialog. Falls back to a temporary download link when Electron APIs are unavailable. Reads the blob as a data URL and extracts the base64 payload for Electron. Exports treatment plan document for reuse outside the download flow. Run npm dev to start the app in development mode. That's it for today. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.